Welcome to the special council meeting of Monday, March the 13th, 2023. I would like to have a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Councillor Baines and seconded by Councillor Potts. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to this matter? Seeing none, as you know, we have one item on the agenda and we've put it on here today because it deals with a matter that we want the province to pay attention to in their upcoming budget, which is imminent. And I'll now pass the floor to Councillor Doherty, whose motion this is.
Thank you, Chair. And I do want to thank Council for agreeing to have this special meeting so that we can have this motion hopefully passed and delivered back to the province and to AMO well in advance of the budget presentation, which will probably be somewhere around March 23rd, we anticipate. So the motion is as follows. Whereas the homeless crisis is taking a devastating toll on families and communities, undermining a healthy and prosperous Ontario. Whereas the homelessness crisis is the result of the underinvestment and poor policy choices of successive provincial governments. Whereas homelessness requires a range of housing, social service, and health solutions from government. Whereas homelessness is felt most at the level of local government and the residents that they serve. Whereas municipalities and district social administration boards are doing their part, but do not have the resources, capacity, or tools to address this complex challenge. Whereas leadership and urgent action is needed from the provincial government on an emergency basis to develop, resource, and implement a comprehensive plan to prevent, reduce, and ultimately end homelessness in Ontario. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Collingwood calls on the provincial government to urgently, A, acknowledge that homelessness in Ontario is a social, economic, and health crisis. B, commit to ending homelessness in Ontario. And C, work with AMO and a broad range of community, health, Indigenous, and economic partners to develop, resource, and implement an action plan to achieve this goal. And further, that a copy of this motion be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Children, Community, and Social Services, the Minister of Health, MPP Brian Saunderson, and to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Potts? Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Well, Councillor Doherty, over to you.
Thank you. At its pre-budget submission to the province, AMO called the issue of homelessness in this province a made in Ontario social, economic, and health disaster, a result of years of poor policy decisions on the file. AMO now is calling upon the provinces to support this submission, to support the action that AMO are recommending to make a real change and real improvement to the to the homelessness situation in this province. I will note that just in this municipality, we do have individuals, businesses, and agencies who are undertaking projects to address or will at least assist in addressing the issue of lack of housing and homelessness. And the county also is taking action. But all of these agencies require the support of multi-agencies, and they require funding for these projects to advance and strengthen in any significant way.
Okay, thank you so much for bringing this motion forward. Oh, Deputy Mayor?
I was just going to add, Mayor Hamlin, that we expect to see the report from the county on April the 3rd on homelessness. So we'll be able to bring back that as well to council.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this to a vote then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Yeah, thank you very much. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Perry, all those in favor? Thank you. So our next meeting starts at 5 o'clock, which is our Development and Operations Standing Committee meeting. Clerk Gomez, should we just adjourn then until 5? Okay, so we'll just adjourn for 4 minutes. Thank you.
cozy in between.
Council, I'm calling to order the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee for March the 13th, 2023. And the reading of the Lend acknowledgement tonight is Councillor Perry. Thank you.
It's actually Bob's turn.
Okay, let's say it's
We'll change
Councillor
our
Ring.
tags.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who are families, friends, and communities, the way we are today. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and the relationship it establishes with original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better and to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation.
And could I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Councillor Baines, Councillor Perry. Any comments or amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And as previously in regards to item 6.2 on the agenda today, which is the update on accessible service in transit, I will step away from the table with a non-pecuniary but code of conduct interest that disqualifies me from participating. I do plan on listening to the staff report before stepping out when the public and the council discuss. And so that's the point. I'll step out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that Councillor Jeffrey has sent her regrets for this evening. Is there any business arising from the previous meeting? And I'll move on to deputations. We have one deputation this evening. It's Mr. John Mealey. Could you come forward, please?
Everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Gonna wait for the first slide here. Thank you for your time, and I trust that some of you or all of you hopefully have read my small novel. Anyway, thank you for that, and I just really want to start with first of all, I'm not a complainer by nature. I'm here as a business owner trying to advance my business and just trying to understand the process. I'm not a expert in the field of planning and all that stuff, but I feel like I've read a lot over the last few years and got a further education on it. Next slide, please. This is what I'm proposing to build on 25 Sandford Fleming. As you know, Sandford Fleming is an industrial area. I think with the Collingwood Brewery, we partner with them on a lot of events over the last few years. And hopefully with Saunders' new building and their music hall, we can really sort of provide an anchor building for that side of town. So I'm pretty excited about the location where we're at. And as you can see, the design we have laid out, if the next slide, I think, shows that. Some of you have seen it. So anyway, I won't bore you with the details of the process to date. I'm sure the council and everyone in the planning department as ad nauseum understands the water issue in the ICBL. The only error I have in my documentation is the fourth point. I am still subject to the ICBL. It's just the process changed. And I think just for a top level overview is the frustration I've had is just not knowing what the process is. And it seems like as soon as I re-engage with the new process after, thinking I was not going to be in business after COVID, I just had purchased both businesses and our land and our building. And then COVID hit and I wasn't sure if I was going to be in business. The exact opposite happened. We had an absolute, crazy last few years in development and what everyone knows was happening up here. Just to give you some perspective, Mountain House the community out. Of course, I'm sure you know it. We did the last 2 phases there. We, did 85,000 square feet of flooring, and we received and distributed all that product in a 1,500 square foot warehouse. So, I mean, that's what's happening up here. I left my banking job and to, we've been up, my wife and I is behind me here. We've been up in this area a long time. I think I've really been able to look forward and seeing what's going to happen in this area. And I think we're just on the ground floor of what the future is going to hold for the building industry in Ontario, specifically in this region. So, I mean, you could just imagine, we also did 240 shower glass enclosures that we had to store. And that's why all these, you can see in our picture, all the sea cans, and it's been in our house. It's been in Meaford. We've rented facilities all over the place, but the lack of efficiency on that side has really put a big impact on our business. So in the summary, I really just wanted to come here today and present my business case and really ask for your help, ask for the community and the planning department. I have to say, Justin has been a huge help to me to help educate me and walk me through the process. The real problem that I don't think you're aware of is that when I talk to a bank or insurance or any kind of contractor or builder, the media, everyone knows that Collingwood under this moratorium. So it makes it very difficult to negotiate any sort of forward contracts without knowing if I actually can move ahead with my building. So it's the first question they have, well, where are you at with your permit? Where are you at with your water? And I'm saying, well, I don't know. So, I mean, I've already invested $250,000 just getting my application to this stage, and I still don't really know if I can move forward with it. So it's really hard to be motivated through the process, not knowing if I'm going to spend all this time and effort and aggravation to not actually get my permit, not actually be able to move forward. This is a really liquid environment, I'm just trying to set up our business to pivot really quickly. I think that's going to be the future of business, especially with all the pressures on the supply chain and all the different things. We're just seeing banks collapsing in the US. Like, there's a lot of stress in my life right now, just in regular business. And I don't think, I think that's all going to be about pivoting. And I don't think waiting 3 years and these kinds of things, that's not how business evolves anymore in this current state of the affair. So I'm really just here to, talk a little bit about the competition. I don't want to go through my application specifically. I just really am looking for a response of making sure that when I get through this proposal and my planning submission is ready, that I'm able to move forward and not and just be able to get it right away and start going to the next step is really what I need to do to execute my business. I encourage all of council to go through these communities that are getting developed here and look at the number of 416 numbers and 905 numbers on the side of all the vehicles. It's my goal to replace those 416 numbers with 705, 445 numbers. And that's where I think the community, we can really benefit from. And my idea of competition, I hope Georgian Design Center gets the job if we don't get it. And we work well together in our local community to kind of protect the jobs that really should go to our local community and not be from out of town. If you notice in our vans, all our vans, we have about 10 vans around the community. The back of the doors, you'll see underneath the doors, it says, "Thank you for supporting a local business that supports local families who care about our community." That's our tagline. It's on all of our stuff. It's on our website. So, and then finally, just going to go through my summarized points. We're really a dry business. We're not like a car wash or anything like that. My staff are all local. We really don't feel like we have an impact on the water allocation. And I'm not going to make it a policy to feed my staff all brand in the, I've been thinking about that joke all day. So really all I'm asking for, I hope we can have a discussion. If you have any questions for me, I'm leaving time in my presentation to, answer any questions you might have, or just have basically a just some communication around local business and where Collingwood's going to try and help support local business that are up here. We're at a disadvantage, a financial disadvantage, because we have a really small, really narrow labor force up here. It takes me over a year to train staff to get it to level where we can turn them loose on their own. But I think we're a really good employer. We offer benefits. You know, we pay a really high wage, a living wage, which I believe in. People will be motivated to work harder. We offer RSP matching. Most of my key employees are shareholders. I've given them shares in my business to help keep them active and engaged. It's just something I believe in. And I'm really looking for the town to maybe embrace the construction industry to generate and maintain high quality jobs. It'd be awesome if the council made a ruling that any new developer up here that's having a permit should have a minimum number of local businesses in their community. It'd be really helpful to have that kind of teeth. Otherwise, I mean, the competition I'm up against, they come up and they stay in a hotel or they stay in wherever and they work, and they're really taking our jobs. So at that, I open the floor to any questions or comments about our application. I mean, our application now with the Panda Summers really helped me, and Justin too, to tell me that we're done our second comments. There's nothing really derogatory, or there's no issues with our property. So I'm expecting as soon as it's completely through the planning department, the council will not hold me up any further.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming here today. You're speaking to a very supportive crowd, I would say. Are there any questions from council? Yes, Councillor Doherty.
Yes, thank you. So just to reiterate, you've been through the process with the planning department and you are very close to getting your final approvals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So perhaps, Chair, through you to Director Valentine, at this point in time, our next batch of approvals will be coming forward next month, is it?
Yes, go ahead, Director Valentine. Can you just give us information on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the councillor, and I would just confirm Mr. Mealey's understanding that the site plan application, we're on the final stages and anticipating providing him with the last round of comments from internal and external agencies this week. Again, no red flags, so as quickly as his team could turn around a final response, we would be able to seek approval at the staff level, as this is a staff delegated function. Then what would happen is his application would go into the very next batch for major development, where council would look at the potential to approve service and capacity allocation. And we're anticipating that to be on the meeting of April the 24th.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
No, thank you. It looks as though your approval is imminent at this point in time.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that because of the changes in the application process, that's what's really held me up. Is as soon as I get ready to do one application, and it changes. So I'm really asking you to consider is to please don't defer the April. If you don't have enough applications in the April batch, to not defer it anymore. That's what I really wanted to come and hear.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're on your side. We want to see you move forward. So thank you for showing up.
Okay.
And thank you. You know, we really appreciate you've chosen Collingwood as a place to expand your business. You know, definitely appreciate the investment and the risks that you're taking. And we're here to help you. And I'm so glad, you know, you were at the stage where it's weeks away, hopefully, from when you can get your water allocation. I do appreciate the problem with the finance companies and the banks. They do know what's going on here, and it can be a problem. So I would, you know, hopefully you're not still waiting for that, and another month will, you know, see you clear on all of that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Oh, sorry, our CEO would like to say something. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to the applicant and also to the public. One of the things, and I hope this will help, I think an approval would help more when hopefully as soon as practical. But one of the things that we always want to communicate to loan lenders and the like is that we did have a pause. However, every year council has improved water up to the maximum that's ever been pre-ICBL had ever been spent in Collingwood. So I know people are cautious in providing those approvals, but we do have space for a lively development industry to continue until the plant is expanded here. And I didn't want that message to get lost. And one of the other reports tonight is actually our every 6 months staff bring forward a recommendation on how much water is left and what can go forward. And it's another healthy amount. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is 6.1. This is with respect to the heritage permit for the property known as 135 Hurontario Street. Would there be a staff report this evening? Yes, Director Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have before you a relatively straightforward report, and we have the Heritage Committee staff and the proponent all in agreement on the recommendations contained therein. The reason that this must come to council, however, this evening is because any heritage permit that involves the demolition of a structure, either in whole or in part, needs a council level approval. That is not staff delegated under our current bylaws. And in this particular case, we have the demolition and then the reconstruction of a rear addition at 135 Hurontario Street. So to that end, we have Community Planner Teakle to take you very briefly through a summary of the report.
Hello, Community Planner Teakle. Please go ahead.
Good evening, committee members. So staff report P 2023-06 is regarding a heritage permit for partial demolition, reconstruction, and alteration at the rear of 135 Hurontario Street. The subject property is located on the east side of Hurontario Street, about 33 meters north of Ontario Street, and contains a two-story brick commercial building built sometime between 1895 and 1905, as well as a frame addition to the rear built sometime after. The rear lot line of the property abuts the town-owned lane way behind and municipal parking lot B to the east. The property is within the Downtown Heritage Conservation District, designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and the property is also designated under Part 4 of the Act via Bylaw 9250. As the Part 4 bylaw is silent regarding the rear facade, the district plan prevails with regard to regulation of the rear. On February 15th, the owner submitted their heritage permit application requesting to demolish the single-story rear addition, secondly, to reconstruct the single-story rear addition on the same footprint, and lastly, to undertake alterations to the second-story rear facade, including a new window, cladding, and doors to a terrace over the new addition. Applications for demolition, as Director Valentine noted, do require council approval. The application was received by the Collingwood Heritage Committee at their meeting on February 21st, and in summary, the committee recommended approval of the application subject to the revision of hinged or swinging doors for the terrace entrance rather than a sliding patio door. The majority of the building on the property is an attribute that contributes to the district. However, the single-story rear addition shows no evidence of having been part of the original building and therefore can be considered not to be a heritage attribute of the district. Similarly, the Part 4 designation bylaw does not speak to the rear in the description of the property's heritage attributes. Collingwood Downtown Heritage Conservation District inventory of buildings from 2002 is also silent with regard to the rear of the property. Based on the silence of the inventory and bylaw 9250 with regard to the rear of the subject property, it appears that the single-story rear addition does not make any contribution to the heritage character of the property or district, and therefore its demolition would not represent a loss to the property or the district's heritage attributes. Staff are of the opinion that given the limited scope of the proposed demolition and that there appears to be no heritage value to the existing addition, that a heritage impact assessment would be an onerous requirement in this particular instance. Staff support the application and are of the opinion that it would enhance the district by refurbishing a rear facade that faces a public lane and parking lot. The Collingwood Heritage Committee has also reviewed the application and has recommended approval of the demolition and requested a minor modification to the proposed facade elevations to the satisfaction of staff. So in summary, staff are recommending that council support the Heritage Committee's recommendation, as well as to expedite the report to the March 20th council meeting. That concludes my overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any members of the public who wish to speak to this staff report? Would there be anyone online, Clerk Gomez? No. Okay. So I'll read in the motion here that the heritage permit application for 135 Hurontario Street be deemed complete and staff be directed to issue a notice of receipt to the applicant. And further, that the issuance of a heritage permit to demolish the existing single-story rear addition, build a new rear addition, and alter the second-story rear facade at 135 Hurontario Street be approved in accordance with the recommendation of the Town of Collingwood its Heritage Committee. And further, that staff be directed to issue the heritage permit within 90 days of serving the applicant with a notice of receipt. And further, the staff report P2023-06 be expedited to the March 2023 meeting of Council. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts, Councillor Ring, thank you. Would there be any questions or comments from Council? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Worship. This certainly looks like a very exciting redevelopment. I just have one question, and that's with regard to changes on the second floor of the building. It appears as though there's 2 residential apartments that currently exist, and on the second floor of that building. I'm just wondering, is there a representative from the proponent or perhaps staff could answer that question?
Thank you. Community Planner Teakle, do you know what's happening currently on the second floor?
Through the chair to Councillor Doherty, I don't know for certain what the uses currently are on the second floor. However, the proposed uses are fully commercial, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yes, I see that. Yeah. It was just that the original representation of the second floor looked like there was 2 apartments. So I guess my next question would be moot if there had been any discussion to make an effort to save those apartments for residential use downtown. But I guess we haven't had that conversation either. What I would like to say, and I'm happy to bring forward a notice of motion later in the meeting, but we have lost second floors in a number of buildings downtown that were residential and are no longer residential. And I think it's urgent that we find some way to incent the retention of residential apartments in our downtown. And so I would love to hear from staff via report what suggestions there could be or what experience we might be able to draw on from other municipalities to improve access to residential in our downtown.
Okay, thank you. Would you like a quick answer now?
I'm happy to have a quick answer.
Okay, go ahead, Director Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I just wanted to assure Councillor Doherty that as part of the Affordable Housing Master Plan, looking at incentives in the downtown and other areas within Collingwood for the retention of affordable or housing of a certain nature can be accomplished through a community improvement plan, which is typically how most municipalities approach that particular issue. Staff would be challenged at this point in time to request the retention of those units if they are, and it's not confirmed, used for residential apartments because they are permitted to be used as commercial uses under the zoning bylaw. So certainly top of mind for staff through the Affordable Housing Master Plan as one vehicle. With the second potential is the update of the zoning bylaw following the official plan review.
Do you have any follow-up?
No, excellent. It sounds as though we are going to be proceeding quickly on that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I know I've been on the second floor of that building because it's right above where the Palladian Sports, that's that building. So it was used for commercial uses and they ran their, I don't know, I call it a t-shirt business, but they were labeling t-shirts and sports equipment up there. So But anyway, I'll just say that I'm very much in support of this motion. I'm very excited to see that owners of properties in our downtown area are now paying attention to the rear of their properties. And it can only be good for our long-term downtown to see those parts of the building that face onto the public lane looking as beautiful as this one, I think, is going to look. So, okay, so I'll bring this to a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The next staff report has to do with options for specialized transit service enhancements. Who will be leading this report this evening? Director Slama? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just give an introduction. We have with us this evening a Public Works and Transit Coordinator, Chris Wisniak, and he will be speaking to the report that covers the options for specialized transit enhancements, and he'll go through his presentation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me in person today. I haven't seen anybody really in person in this meeting room in a while, so
Nice to see
glad
you.
to be here. Okay, let's go for slide 1, please. Okay, here we are. So I'm here to go over some options that were asked of staff in response to an amended motion from the January 23rd council meeting, which is to come back to the committee with some no-cost options to help enhance the specialized transit services. So we've put together a fairly comprehensive report, and I'm sorry it was 14 pages long. It had a lot of info in it, so I hope to recap it all in about 8 slides here tonight, and then answer any questions that anyone may have. To start off, I just want to go over some key definitions when we're talking about transit service delivery. The first being the difference between service hours and revenue service hours. So when we want to go and increase service from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on a bus or on our transit system, it's not just paying for 2 hours. So we're extending service for 2 hours, but to make that service run, we may need 2 buses on specialized. We may need 3 buses on conventional transit. So what that does is it multiplies that by how many buses there are, and it can incrementally increase the costs for every expansion that we do. So that's why I wanted to make it a little bit more defined in the report so that it was understandable to anybody who has been reading it. The next key definition and term was on demand. Now, the term on demand has been, I think it's been taken a little bit differently in the context of specialized transit taxi and conventional transit. As part of our 2021 transit service review and optimization study, we had a recommendation that we move to on-demand transit. And that was strictly related to conventional transit. So that is not door-to-door on-demand transit, that is stop-to-stop. So that means you pick up an app, you figure out where you want to go, you pick where you're from, where you're standing and where you want to go, and it calculates your route. And that's the on-demand when we're talking conventional transit. The on-demand, even with conventional transit, is limited. It's not a magic solution to all the transit problems in the world. It is a fantastic tool to look at areas where our routes are not performing well. And that's why in our phase 1 of implementation, we're going from a evening and weekend standpoint to start to allow us to see how that works. So as on-demand relates to everything transit related in Collingwood, it's only being moved into conventional transit at this point. So when we talk about specialized on-demand, it's not referring to the same program we're doing with conventional public transit. And similar with door-to-door. The door-to-door service has nothing to do with on-demand. The door-to-door service is specifically tailored to our specialized transit services. And that's the Transit Plus, which is operating the assisted door-to-door services within the town. Next slide, please. So our recommendations, again, we were asked to come back with a no cost, no budget impact solution. So that we have 2 options with the potential of a third option for council. The first one is maintaining the existing service as it is. And with that, there's a bit of a caveat with that, is that we are going to enhance that service. So where we were talking about midday hours being completely booked, we're going to be now throwing on another bus on it in the midday to help get those demand response bookings. So when somebody calls in, it's no longer going to be, we are fully scheduled, we can't do that. We have another full bus to give more rides during the hours of 10 and 3. Our operator has told us 10 and 3 are the hours that we need it. So I worked with our counterparts at Clearview Township and Wasaga Beach. We looked at what we had budgeted for this year, and within our budgeted amounts, we have enough to make that happen. That extra budget that all three of us put in was basically a little bit of a contingency for this service, and maybe we hadn't expected it to come this quick, but we have it there, and we've agreed to make that work. So regardless of how we proceed, that is something that we plan to implement as soon as we can get the proper qualified drivers to get that service up and running. Option 2 is the extension of Transit Plus from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday nights only. Now, this is in response to some of the concerns we've had from the public. I know some of you are here tonight about getting around after hours to hockey games, to other events in town. What we had proposed, or what we are proposing, is that this service have a flat rate fee. So it wouldn't be the same as Transit Plus. So it would not be your $2 from point A to point B. It would be a flat rate fee that we would have to determine through council and through staff, something that is fair and equitable to everybody. Now, with this option, we also have to consider some of the issues that may arise with extending specialized transit and not extending conventional transit. I operate in both realms. For years, we've had people asking us, can we put public transit till 11 o'clock? And we say we are constrained by budget, we are constrained by fleet. But if we move this way, it's possible because it's not as much of a resource than conventional is. We're not throwing 3 large buses out. We don't need 3 full-time staff. We're not going through 3 vehicles full of fuel. So all those things are not applied to specialized transit. So we have a little bit more flexibility with that. And along with this option of implementation, if it does go, it may allow us, give us some metrics to evaluate the use in the evening hours of specialized transit. So, you know, it does have its pros and cons, but it is a viable option, and it is something that can happen relatively quickly. I can't make any promises on time, but I would say between the 1 to 2 month timeline. The third option is that council directs staff to enter into a non-standard procurement with the local taxi provider. And again, this would be similar to the service that the town and Ace Cabs had agreed on from 2015 to 2020 and up to 22 with the subsidization. So that is an option. I have recently spoken with the owner of the company, not as recently as I would like, but at that point, it was still a potential option. So it is, I think, an option that we may be running out of time with the private company, because we have done a lot of on and off and extensions. And I appreciate the company letting me know that too. So that is an option that I still think that we could go forward on if we are directed by council. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Option 1 is to maintain the existing system. So this option is still in alignment with our transit review and optimization plan. It's still included in the costs with our contract with Landmark, so we're not looking at any increased operation cost from a contractor. We're doing it in collaboration with our partners, Wasaga Beach and Clearview Township. And that addition of that bus is going to do in the middle of the day is going to give us that availability to help with those call and request and get a bus to somebody as soon as they need it. And this is also something that it has a relatively short implementation period, and I would say in the 1 to 2 month timeline. Next slide, please. Second option that I spoke of just recently was, again, the extension from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock p.m. on weekends only. This cost would come to the municipality of Collingwood only at a cost of $10,200. That's an annual cost. So moving from March to December, it will be reduced by about a quarter. This is not something that we will be running in conjunction with our partners. So not Wasaga Beach and Clearview. This would be only operating. And again, we would recommend that there be consideration for the implementation of a flat rate fee for this service. So, you know, in the area of $15 to $20 for a flat rate fee anywhere within the municipality. And again, this is something that is within the 1 to 2 month timeline. Next slide, please. So the other alternate option is the provision of the ACE Cabs accessible taxi service. This service would be at the moment operated by one taxi cab within the municipality of Collingwood only. And it would be subsidized by the town in full. The fares remain with the provider, so the town does not get a net fares. And we would have to do this through a non-standard procurement as per our purchasing bylaw. Total annual cost for the remainder of this year, $63,000, and annual moving forward, $84,000. And it would be funding from the operating contingency reserve for 2023, and then moved into a 2024 budget. Next slide, please. So some key considerations and some clarifications on Transit Plus as a whole. When we implemented Transit Plus, we never envisioned it to operate in the manner as a taxi service. Transit Plus is a specialized transit service offered which operates similar to any specialized transit in municipalities across Ontario. Transit Plus has been extensively improved from our previous service with Red Cross. Red Cross was a fantastic provider. They were fantastic people to work with. The drivers were excellent. It had nothing to do with that. A lot of the issues revolved around Red Cross being a national corporation with their own national rules and their own national guidelines, which prevented us to expand service to certain types of individuals, times of day for certain individuals, and for certain types of trips. That was outside the AODA. We wanted to be in line with the AODA. And by moving into specialized transit with Transit Plus, we are meeting the guidelines under the AODA, under all aspects when it relates to specialized transit only. Again, there's been some good news about it. I know there have been bad news, not bad news, but there's always ups and downs with any type of service. But there has been an immense intake of clients for this service. And the fact that it's gone this big, this fast is a very good thing for transit in general, because we always want to see full buses and not empty buses. Somebody in transit's dream to see that after years of it not being like that due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the subsidy that the town of Collingwood paid for the accessible taxi starting in 2020 was intended to be a temporary measure. This was not part of the operating contract at that time. This was something that the town did to keep the service going as a result of lost revenues during the pandemic. It wasn't a relief. It was the town stepping up and saying, we need to keep the service going. It's important. The intent of the original contract with ACE was that we provided startup funding for them for the first 18 months, which we did. And that would have been in 15 into the middle of 16. And then from 2017 to 2020, the town did not pay a single penny towards that service. So we weren't paying for 3 years because the service was supposed to operate in perpetuity after the original capital incentive, startup incentive was paid to ACE. So it's understandable that due to the way that things are in the economy today, that ACE has said that they cannot operate it due to its financial viability without the subsidization from the town. The subsidy to a taxi was not part of our original transit service review. It was out of the scope of that. And excuse me. What we did was, again, a temporary solution to get things through the pandemic. And right now, the town is still following what we are in our department, following the recommendations from the 5-year transit service study. And we're looking forward for the on-demand. We're looking forward to the expansion of service. We're looking forward to how the software is going to help in our booking process for specialized transit. So there's a lot of stuff that's upcoming that's all part of our original plan. And we would like to maintain the progression that we've continued on with that plan. Slide, please. So, recognizing that there are these issues, we at the town, like our town staff, have begun to look at contacting some of our outside agencies for assistance, for information, and to lead us in the right direction of where to go. We've most recently sent off a letter to provincial legislature outlining our challenges that we're experiencing with accessible transit and the funding that is associated with accessible transit. We have also met with the hospital board to look at how we can time the release of patients so that they fall within our operating hours. Both Mayor Hamlin and I were on a call this morning, and the hospital is able to accommodate that for us because we have a fairly wide window of operation. So that is some good news right now moving forward. I still continue to be a part of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I've sat on every meeting for almost the last 8 months, keeping the committee updated with every challenge that we've had, with every suggestion that they have. They provided feedback for our accessible transit application. I always want to keep the committee apprised of everything that's happening so that they're never caught off guard if there are changes and that they can relay to other members of the community what's going on with regards to accessible transportation. I myself have been consulting with some transit industry professionals to get their take on what are we doing? What we're doing, is it in adherence with the AODA? Is it in line with other municipalities across Ontario? And I've had several good conversations with some very, very smart people who deal with transit issues across Ontario. And from their take, from what I've given them, that we are doing a fantastic job providing a service to a municipality of this size. And that's a really good feeling to hear that from people who are dealing with TTC, HRT, and Niagara Transit. We've also explored additional sources of revenue generation. You can see in the report that I did put in a section with potential fare increases. It is something, it's not a lot, but I think I do mention in the report that we need to caution the increase of fares at a point where our ridership is just starting to rebound, which is really good right now. The last 4 or 5 months, I would say our ridership has come up to almost the 85% mark of where we were. We were at 40 during COVID. We got up to 60 in 21. 22, we were about 75, and now we're pushing 85% of our previous ridership. So this is really good. Sometimes I would fear if we increase fears now, it might stop that charge back up. But it is an option that council can consider. And as well, we did bring the advertising report back in February as an additional revenue generating source. So that is what I have today. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you for that thorough report. That was great. Yep, Deputy Farr's excusing himself. And we'll see, is there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item tonight? Mr. Ireland, please come forward.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Hamlin, Town Council, and staff. I'd like to share some comments regarding the staff report PW 2023-048, the one referring to Mr. Wisniak's presentation that he just finished. Prior to preparation of this report, Mr. Wisniak made reference to notice given by Ace Cabs some 28 months ago that they were not interested in providing the on-demand door-to-door specialized service after the end of their then current contract, I believe. Since it appears that staff did not react soon enough to make the necessary changes needed to continue this part of the transit service, here we are in 2023 still considering the options without a service in place. We have reviewed the aforementioned staff report, and there is progress taking place. However, it's while our disabled residents must rely on 1 to 3 days pre-booking, which is simply not acceptable. At stake are missed appointments, no rides available on demand, and a loss of independence, dignity, and deterioration of mental health as a result. Think about that. We are all aware that some members of council inherited this situation, and all members now have to deal with it on an almost emergency basis. It appears that staying within budget is a bigger priority than accessibility for the disabled, i.e. the constant references to how much everything is going to cost. Although the options for enhancements to specialized service could work, none are complete, and delays in implementations only make matters worse. So, we strongly recommend that a motion be passed to include the following. Extend the hours of operation to at least 11 p.m., preferably 12 midnight, 7 days a week. Doing it for 2 nights a week is, well, that's nice, but you know, you've got not only disabled passengers, but you've got people that work, young people that are working till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and the only way they can get home is a $20 or $22 cab ride. So if we're going to extend the service, extend it every day of the week. Let's get it done. Get the on-demand, door-to-door service functioning before the end of March, not the end of May. That's 2 more months. People have been sitting at home all this time waiting for something to happen. Put the financial and operational implications aside, absorb the budget overruns, and make accessibility, independence, dignity, and mental health the first priority. Note, these requests come from our ad hoc group of residents, plus 2,276 supporters that have signed and commented on a petition that I launched about 10 days ago, which is meant to be in support for council to rectify the current problems, regardless of budget and operational constraints. Not meant to intimidate, it's not to pick a fight, it's there to help all of you to make a decision to get this done. Thank you for your time and interest.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Any questions? I didn't use my whole 5 minutes.
Well, we'll see if anyone else wants to use them.
Okay.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to council? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. For the record, my name is Norman Sandberg. I live at 328 Pine Street in Collingwood. And I would like to make it clear that I am not here representing any group nor individual. The thoughts that I'm expressing and sharing with you are mine and mine alone. On-demand transportation for the physically disabled is a service that was considered and supported by council when I sat at this table some years ago, and some of you who are here today were at that table as well. This service was also supported by subsequent councils until earlier this year, and with this council considering other options. I recognize that council is in a difficult position in terms of budget considerations, as it does what it sees as in the best interest of our taxpayers in a time of significant cost increases, exacerbated by the reality that many of our businesses and residents are suffering financially from COVID-induced income reduction. Mayor Hamlin and members of council, the AODA requires that municipalities providing a public transit system must have equal level of service and accessibility for all users. Again, previous councils that I and current members of this council sat on recognized and supported that and considered this as we created and continued to support the current public transit system. I recognize that on-demand, door-to-door service, accessible transportation service for the physically disabled is not part of a traditional public transit system. Therefore, there is no legislated requirement for municipalities to provide this. However, I must point out that many municipal services provided by municipalities are not legislated requirements, but are a decision by council to provide that service for the benefit and enjoyment of its residents. Many of these things do not make money nor even break even. They are a cost that is paid for largely by the general or through the general tax levy. These services include parks, arenas, sidewalk snow plowing, fire departments. Yes, fire protection is not a legislated requirement, but it is a choice of council, the level of service that is provided. In our municipality and most others, these and other services have been deemed a benefit to the municipality by its council for the enjoyment of benefit of separate sections of its residents. Seldom is the benefit, such as fire protection or snow plowing, universal. And that's okay. This council will be responsible for its portion of a largely unfunded water filtration plant, 30% of 121 million, about 36 million. Similarly, within the next 10 years for a $250 million, my estimate, sewage treatment plant expansion. You're undertaking studies for potentially a $45 million theater, and will soon embark on a study for a multi-use facility. By the way, Wasaga Beach's dual pad with the running track is about 56 million or 59 million, and Barrie has just started yet another multi-use facility at an estimated $110 million capital cost. These, again, are council decisions for what it has deemed as non-legislated needs and benefits for their municipalities. Mayor Hamlin and members of council, and I do direct my comments to council, not to staff, because it is council direction that staff acts upon. May I be so bold to suggest that the continuance of providing an $80,000 plus or minus, like the $86,000 in Mr. Wisniak's report per year, is not a sound business decision. However, it is an opportunity, and I suggest a responsibility of a municipal council to go beyond dollars and consider what makes sense. Yes, and the pun is intentional. On-demand, accessible door-to-door transportation makes sense. It is an essential service for a disadvantaged segment of our population that wants nothing more than the opportunity to do what our town motto says, and that is to live, work, and play on an equal footing with the rest of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else, member of the public, like to address council this evening on this? Would there be anyone online, Clerk Gomez? Okay, I'll read in the motion then. The staff report PW 2023-04 options for specialized transit service enhancements be received, and that council directs staff to implement the following options to enhance specialized transit service for the community. 1. Maintain existing specialized transit with planned service enhancements. And 2. Extension of Transit Plus from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday nights only, with funding to come from the Operating Contingency Reserve for 2023 and to be included in the 2024 budget. Or, and that council directs staff to proceed with the alternative option provided, being a non-standard procurement contract with a private taxi company to provide individual, accessible, on-demand taxi service for individuals in the community, with funding to come from the Operating Contingency Reserve for 2023 and to be included in the 2024 budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Houston and Councillor Perry, thank you. Okay, I'll open this up to, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to clarify, there was an or in there. So there was the first part or the second. So just to clarify which part was moved. Thank you.
So I should not put both these on the table right now. Okay, so we're not going to put both of these on the table for discussion. We're going to pick one and sever this. I'll put this forward as a severed motion. So would one member of council like to pick one of these options? And we'll get someone to second that. Councillor Houston.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact process here, but I'd like to put forward the alternative option because I believe it actually aligns closest with my original recommendation at council back in January.
Thank you. Would there be a seconder for that? Councillor Perry, yeah, thank you. Okay, open for discussion. Councillor Houston.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I think the alternative option that's presented in the report aligns closest with the original motion that I was putting forward back in January, and I think it's the one that addresses the biggest number of concerns with the public, mainly the times of accessibility and the ease of being able to book with that operator. That, to my understanding, looking at their hours, provide service Monday to Thursday till midnight. Friday, it appears to be 24 hours, and then Saturday and Sunday to 3 a.m., which I think extends further than the other recommendations and would provide better service. Based on looking at the cost of that versus some of the other costs, to me, it also appears to be the most financially reasonable one. So I think it checks all the boxes in my mind in supporting accessibility in this community.
Thank you. Who else would, Councillor Potts, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. I'm also in support of that analogy. I think that is the direction that I would like to see go, and then also moving kind of forward with the transit system. A lot of the concerns that I'm hearing in the community, along with the accessible transit, is the hours. So I think it would be over the course of the next, months, we can look at putting into place the transit to go to 11 o'clock across the board. I'm hearing that a lot of workplaces and that are struggling, and to try to get staff home at a certain time. And I think along with that, I think we do have to look at increasing bus fares slightly to help offset some costs. But in the case here of accessible transit, I do like this option and I will support it. I do have a couple questions for Coordinator Wozniak if he could just maybe come up, and through you, Chair.
Yes, of course.
In regards to the Transit Plus, do Wasaga Beach and Clearview, what do they pay towards, what's their contribution towards the Transit Plus service?
So,
go ahead.
Through your Councillor Potts, through the chair. it's split three ways. So our agreement is that it's 33, 33, 33 for all services between the three municipalities.
Okay, and if I may, through you, Chair, I just have a couple of questions again. And I can send these to you also, so if you don't have the answers tonight, no worries. Talking about the additional bus that's going to be perhaps to help offset or to take care of the extra load during the day, at whose cost? Is all three municipalities contributing to that as well?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Councillor Potts. We have two of our own buses in Collingwood. Wasaga Beach has two, and Wasaga Beach has got a brand new ProMaster coming in that they're allocating to this service. So we're going to have 4 to 5 buses that operate in here. Excuse me. I haven't talked this much in a while. So there's no capital cost to the town of Collingwood on that.
Okay. And just the last sort of note, I would like to request just to see over the next while the volume stats for what the ridership just in the surrounding communities are, just to kind of get a better understanding whether if it's busier in Wasaga, busier in Clearview. Is Creemore included into Clearview and as well Collingwood? So I don't expect any stats tonight, but certainly I will follow up offline with that. But again, just in general, I am in support of Councillor Houston's thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
To Coordinator Wozniak, while you're still up there, thank you for this report. It's quite factual, obviously. It presents a lot of data, but I have been frustrated in this whole file in the lack of data about exactly the use from 9 to 7 o'clock or 11 o'clock, excuse me. And I wonder whether ACE Cabs could have provided that as far as what can we expect in the way of an average annual night of these accessible pickups from 9 to 11. Is it 3 or is it 30? And on Friday nights, is it 6 or is it 16 or 60? I think it impacts upon the ultimate decision as far as factually, what are we speaking about as far as use goes during those periods?
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair. The use we don't have is granular on that service down to the hour. The previous cab service, we were getting between, I would say, 50 and 65 rides a month.
A month, okay.
So that's in almost an 18-hour operating window. So if you break that down, it's very few per day. On our specialized transit, our full days, we were doing between 25 and 35 a day, which is a huge number considering, and we're ride sharing too. There's a lot of work going on in between. So those 25 rides on, let's see if it's 12 and a half for bus, and you've got 8 hours, that's there and backs, that's securing wheelchairs, that's securing devices. So those numbers are high in numbers of specialized transit. But as for the cab, it's difficult to determine the exact usage if we do increase that service or move forward with that service. ACE has typically provided me monthly, just a monthly count. But if that's something that we require as part of a non-standard agreement, that we get detailed hourly counts to see how we can evaluate our use of the cab, I'm sure that could help and make a difference. And I can, Councillor Potts had mentioned to see some of the ridership statistics from the previous months of our recent launch of Transit Plus, and I will have those to council by tomorrow as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I'm concerned about what the numbers will actually end up being for this extended hours from 9 to 11. And under the circumstances, I'm not going to support this motion, but would be more attuned to option 2B. But that's a different process with council. Thank you.
Go.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Thank you. So just, first of all, just to confirm, with Transit Plus, as we are operating it today, we are still requiring bookings of up to 3 days.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Doherty. We are still asking for 3 days. If you call and ask for a ride that day, we don't say you can't call, but the odds of getting that same day trip are limited. The fact is that there are so many registered riders that have, more specifically, we have a lot of dialysis patients that are blocked in through the days that we are getting back and forth to the hospital. So in those certain days, we're seeing those periods where you can't get that on demand style of booking. So what we're hoping is that with the addition of this bus, it's going to be our kind of like little freebie that gets to go around and pick up these same day, same calls. Because we're not getting calls, 10 at a time. It's just maybe 1 or 3 that we can meet within our current budget.
Thank you. So actually, that was going to be my next question is, when we enhance the Transit Plus by adding the extra bus at the busier times, will that eliminate the need to book so far in advance?
Again, through the chair to Councillor Doherty, yes, it will reduce the need. I think our recommendation right now is 3 days to help you get a ride. So I would still continue to recommend, but we could take the stance that, same day bookings are available and we can accommodate where possible. And it actually be real that we can do that. Right now we're saying we can't guarantee that those are. So with the addition of that bus, and again, I can't predict what's going to happen with the ridership because it is gone from like what we're looking at right now. It's jumped so much. If we start seeing it go any further, that might fill up that bus again, and we might have to grow again. So it's hard to say how long that will last, but I know that adding a bus in right now is going to ease some of that. I speak with our operator daily, and that's been their biggest frustration is that they can't get to everybody. And they want to. We just need more people. We need another vehicle, and we need to get it out there and going. But that approval has to come from us, which we've already given them because it's within our allotted budget.
Okay. The quotation that Ace Cabs have provided is like a flat charge, regardless of how many pickups that they actually do, or like accessible taxi pickups that they do.
Through the chair to Councillor Doherty, flat rate charge, it's a cost per month that equals 84 annually, so it's about 7,000 a month.
Yeah.
And we don't get a recoup on fares. The fares go back directly to ACE. So it's just a operating fund to keep this service in place.
So is there any possibility that we could contract with Ace Cabs such that they would only do a pickup in a situation where we could not answer the request with our existing service, or if we extend service until 11, then during that period of time, but that the charge to the town would be on a per call basis and not on a flat fee?
Through your chair to Councillor Doherty, I think that I had spoken with CAO Skinner and Director Slama about this earlier this week in an article I read from Kingston Transit. I think that if we were to move with the private company, we're still going to pay the base rate of $84,000 either way, if we're calling them per ride or not. I don't think that the amount of riders will justify a per ride cost to ACE. And I think they know that as well. But the alternative in something like that is having a taxi subsidization plan, which runs in with your transit. And what some municipalities do is that where they have specialized transit and they cannot meet the on-demand need, so when somebody calls into Landmark, say, and they say, I want to ride today, Landmark can't do it, Landmark would call the cab company, not the person, and say, this is a specialized transit fare at that specialized transit rate, and they send it out. So not everybody could call and get that rate, but if it's a really good model because it utilizes, and what I had mentioned, it would utilize that cab to its utmost potential. But again, that's something we would have to discuss in an agreement with the local cab company.
And do you think that would be more cost efficient?
I think it would be cost efficient in the fact that it would utilize that cab much more. Instead of doing 50, 60 rides just by the few people in that user group that are using it, it could be used as almost an arm reach of our specialized transit. And it's like a taxi script program, which kind of works in other municipalities, but it's an effective model. And for something like this, it may be something that could work. But again, that's something that at the direction of council, if it goes private, again, to a local company, there'd have to be some sort of negotiation with the company as to how we make that work. It's a really good, I like the model, but the other company has to like that model too, so.
So in your report, you reference the fact that another report will be coming to standing committee next month on taxi servicing and taxi licensing review. Through you, Chair, either to the clerk or to Manager Wisniak.
Yes, go ahead, Clerk Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. The taxi report will be coming to council by May at the latest.
And just as a follow-up, now that is just a review of the licensing protocols that we have in place right now. It's not a quotation.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's a review of the licensing program and looking at rideshare as well.
I just feel with that report coming so quickly, and particularly with the notion of looking at rideshare options, that I really hesitate to make the commitment to ACE cabs the way they're proposing to provide it right now. Just feel it's a lot of money, and I feel that to some degree it's been politicized by ACE, and I don't like that. Anyway, those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Normally I don't endorse any councillors' opinions or anything like that. I let my speaking be shown with my cards, but I will say tonight that I fully back Councillor Houston's ideas and thoughts on this. I do have a couple questions and a comment. I think it was Mr. Wisniak. Accessible taxi service is only in the municipality of Collingwood, no town of Blue Mountains or Wasaga Beach. I mean, will it travel to?
Through your worship, through Councillor Perry, that option 2B would only be in Collingwood.
Okay.
The normal Transit Plus service operates to the extension of our Blue Mountain Link route, which we are part of, and all of Wasaga Beach and all of Clearview, because they are contributors to the service and part of the agreement. But as of that 2B or 2A option, our partners are not involved in that. That is to address the needs solely in our community. That's why we were looking for cost-effective solutions. If we go into a larger spread, it means more buses, more vans, which we can start to come back up again. We were trying to keep it on the low level where we were asked, and I think there was one other option, is that you just extend everything, conventional and specialized, but it's also at a big cost too. That is the most equitable way to do it, transit-wise.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ireland, you said you had a response of about 2,200 for the petition? Hold on.
Right now, it's sitting at about 2,275 signatures. People that are in favor of bringing back the on-demand door-to-door service. And it continues to grow. You know, it kind of peaked right now, but we're getting more every day.
Right. Well, go ahead.
And once again, with respect, this should help council. We intended it to support council, not for any other nefarious purposes, if you will.
I guess what I'm getting at is it wasn't too long ago that there was a petition about a restaurant down in Collingwood Quay. And as important as that was, I think this is of greater value. I just want to get that out there. That's my opinion. And Mr. Sandberg, I want to comment on your comments. It's not a question, it's just a comment. The 63,000 for the rest of this year and the 84,000 for 2024, I think is a small price to pay for that service for such an important part of our community. Okay, thank you.
Yes, who is that? Director Slama?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask through you to Councillor Perry. I heard your original question as asking if the accessible taxi and not the specialized transit, if that might commute to Town of Blue Mountains or Clearview. So
correct. There was the accessible taxi that I was wondering if it would travel outside of the municipality.
Okay, so Coordinator Wisniak, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the taxi, as it has operated in the town of Collingwood in the recent years, is that yes, if a ride initiates in Collingwood, you could get a transport to a neighboring municipality.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess thank you for clarifying that, because that was the intent of my question.
Okay.
Not from outside the municipality coming in to pick up.
Yes.
Or to
Am I
drop
correct?
off. Yeah.
Correct, Coordinator Wisniak. Thank you.
Yes. So this.
Thank you.
Our original terms of service developed in 2007, which again, Councillor Sandberg and I were both part of that at the time, was that any start trip or end trip had to be from Collingwood. So if you were coming in from Clearview, it would come and get you if you were coming to Collingwood, and the same vice versa. And this remained in place for several years. So it has been quite a strong commitment on behalf of the municipal councils over the years. When I put it together, there's been well over $1 million spent by the town of Collingwood, making sure that there was an accessible taxi in our municipality. And it was a big commitment, and it shows that we were striving to be leaders, right, in accessible transit and transportation. It went from provider to provider. So it's not the first time that we've been in this scenario. And it's a difficult service to operate. It has high costs, it has high overhead, and the insurance, and they're difficult to get the proper drivers that you want to transport people around safely. That is paramount. And keeping those reliable drivers, which is tough in today's job market. We're seeing it with our transit people too. So I just wanted to highlight that too before I ended things off as well.
Thank you. I'll get back to you after I just hear from Councillor Ring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamlin. Through you to Coordinator Wozniak. 3 weeks ago, I made a motion, and at the time, I thought it was going to be a stopgap because I was hoping that Landmark would come back with the service a lot quicker than they have. And I'm hearing that we're still going to be waiting until May for it to be fully implemented to satisfaction of us. And even if we do go with one of the options and stay with Landmark, it's going to be 2 months. And the reason my original motion was to try to do a quick stopgap in between so that we could get accessible transportation for our disabled now. And it seems like the only way that's going to happen is if apparently if we maybe take on or recontract Ace Cabs again. That wasn't the original intention, but I fully support the motion that's on the floor right now from Councillor Houston for the fact that when we got on council, I was told that maybe Ace Cabs didn't even want to do it, and then I've heard when I withdrew my motion because I knew that this was going to be on the table today, and I made a comment at the time when I explained why I withdrew it. I still left the door open that I could come back with the Ace Cab thing because if we're not going to get the satisfaction of getting something in place a lot quicker than it has been. And this is my opinion only. Back in December, we discussed this, that it would be in place by February. Now I'm here in May. What's going to say it's going to be ready in May. So for that reason, I think we have to go back. Obviously, Ace Cab is willing to do it, or they wouldn't give you a quote. And that quote must have came in the last 2 to 3 weeks because when I made that motion, we were the understanding that they weren't willing to quote. And I had asked maybe we reapproach them, and I'm assuming that we've got a quote, so I'm assuming that was taking place. So for the reasons of let's get something in place now, it is a bit of money, but I think it's a service that that's necessary. And I agree with some of the comments Councillor Potts made with maybe we look at the whole thing, but right now, I think our biggest concern in this town is the accessible part of it, and I would really like to see that get in place sooner rather than later. So I would like to say I'm going to support the motion that's on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Thank you. I'm wondering if I can propose an amendment to the motion that's on the floor right now. And that would be that we would proceed with the non-standard procurement contract until the end of June only. And at that time, that would allow us to have our third bus on hand with the Transit Plus service, and we would get a better idea as to whether we're able to provide a service that's equivalent to the taxi service or virtually equivalent to the taxi service before we commit to a full year.
Before I ask for a seconder, Director Slama, did you? It was Coordinator Wozniak. Go ahead.
I have spoken with Ace, and I want to do a quick little response to Councillor Ring's statement earlier. The way that specialized transit is operated, and especially which I know in Ontario, it cannot operate like a taxi cab within the operating budget that we have. When you have a strong registered rider base where people are pre-planning, you'd need double the amount of vehicles to be able to keep it in operation like a taxi cab. We know, and I know when dealing with our transit study, we knew that there was never an intention of having Transit Plus operate in a cab-like style. And then with our increased ridership, we knew that we weren't going to be able to attain these same day rides without increasing the service level. I know that I've spoken with transit people in Hamilton, transit people in Barrie. They are between sometimes 7-10 day bookings. Barrie is between 5 and 7 day bookings for specialized transit. And we're at 1 to 3 day bookings for specialized transit. Now, the difference is they are large municipalities that have cab companies that operate independently of the municipality where they are not involved. So those trips can be accommodated that way. So ultimately, if we're looking for a service that is going to be immediate, the private way would be the quickest and fastest solution to get to that point. However, with that said, I know that the private company in town is looking for something more long-term, not another month extension, which we've been keeping on giving them. Because we have given extensions and stopped and given and stopped to be able to maintain the service and maintain vehicles to keep those in the municipality. They're looking for something a little bit more permanent.
So just to go back to the motion that council, or the amendment that Councillor Doherty's put on the floor, are you saying they wouldn't entertain that?
Madam Chair, I would not anticipate them accepting that offer. We have asked for a number of options leading up to this meeting and the last. And my last ask was about a week and a half ago. And it was under the condition that it was for a 2-year term.
Thank you. What did you want to do with your motion then, Councillor Doherty? Your amendment to the motion, sorry.
Well, we're speculating as to what their response would be, but if we were to guarantee service, the purchase of service guaranteed until the end of June and not on a if-come basis, then perhaps they may be more amenable. I find it hard to believe that they can't be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Flexible, thank you. Because I doubt that their accessible taxis are being introduced or taken away based on whether they have a contract with the town or not. I'm sure they have accessible taxis all the time. So I'd like to at least go forward and make that offer, see what happens.
Okay, would there be a seconder for Councillor Doherty's amendment? Councillor Baines, thank you. Any comment on the amendment? Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. I will not support the amendment. I think this is the third or potentially fourth time since I've been sitting in this seat that we will be going back to these cabs to talk again. And I think we need to come up with a concrete solution. If it's a 2-year contract, obviously we're still unsure of when exactly the on-demand is going to roll out. I think we at least commit to a 2-year contract. In all fairness to the business owner that does have to supply the taxi and the drivers, and review it at that time. I think it doesn't look. It's not professional of us to keep going back and forth and back and forth. It's really wasting staff and resources and everybody else's time. So I would not support the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on this amendment? Okay, we'll bring it to a vote. Oh, sorry, did you want to speak to it? Thank you.
More of a question, and I don't know whether it's through you to Clerk Almas. An amendment can't change the intent of the original motion, can it?
Yes, go ahead, Clerk
Thank you
Almas.
through the chair. So the basis of this motion, if the amendment is put forward, it would basically delete where it says with funding to come from the operating contingency reserve for 2023 and to be included in 2024. That portion would be removed to say it would come from operating contingency for the period until the end of, June.
Yes.
Of 2023.
Okay. Could I make a comment on?
Absolutely,
okay,
yeah.
Coordinator Wozniak responded to something that I said, and it wasn't. And I realized that there are two different services: the transit and the cab service. This whole situation came to light on the hours. It wasn't so much the service. I don't think more than extended hours. And that I wanted to get the ACE Cab involved to let's get at it now and extend the hours with them now. And so there wasn't a debate on whether the services were the same or not.
Yes, Coordinator Wisniak.
To provide this type of service, just with what I know in contract costs, I've done, when this first happened in 2020, we did an RFI for other companies to come in. This is going to be the lowest cost you'll get to provide accessible taxi anywhere. It will be the lowest cost to solve that problem. If it goes into Transit Plus and we roll it into Transit Plus, it will be double of the budget that we are currently at with Transit Plus, which pushes it up to about a $500,000 mark. If we're trying to run a taxi specialized service with our own fleet, that's what it will end up doing. It will grow, which will require more. So the constraints that we have with specialized transit they're not bad constraints, but once we get to the point where we can't hold it in anymore, then we can do small expansions. And that's the same way that we've moved with our conventional service since 2006. It started off with 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, as the ridership demands it. So again, from a cost perspective, if we're looking at costs, that would be the lowest cost to solve the immediate on-demand or demand response type booking.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other comments, I'll bring a vote on Councillor Doherty's amendment. All those in favor? That's 2, and those opposed. And that fails. Thank you. CEO Skinner, did you wish to add something at this point?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, when we're comparing conventional transit with taxi, remember that a taxi fare is $20+ and a conventional transit fare is, say, $2. And we're not able to charge more for Transit Plus, nor do I wish to, but just because those are the rules in Ontario. So if whatever you charge for conventional transit, you must charge the same, which is fair. And I did want to point out that if the hours are the issue, there is an option in the report for hours, evening hours of Transit Plus only going till 1 a.m. at about $70,000. It is not as flexible as a taxi, but it does sit with the, in the transit side, users would be paying $2 versus $22, depending on where they're going, of course. But I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. It is substantially more work for staff and potentially less flexible in the how quickly one might get a ride, but I didn't want the vote to occur until I'd at least made sure you had all the information in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'm also frustrated by the lack of information that we have, and it's not your fault, on how many riders would use the service past 9 p.m. And I thought I heard during our discussion with the CEO at the hospital this morning that in terms of hours of number of people coming to the hospital who were disabled after hours by taxi was 5 or 6 over 2 years. Is that the level that we're talking about? Like, I have no idea.
Through the chair, or to you, Madam Chair, again, the numbers we have are not as granular as we would like. They're not. I think ACE doesn't have a fare management system like we do have in transit, where we can track by hour and stop and day. But given the amount of ridership that we've seen on it, and that I've seen over almost 15 years, it has not changed and it has not grown. It's remained at a level that's fairly consistent, between 600 and 900 rides a year over the years. They're most frequently used during the midday hours. So the late night hours are, again, the off-peak times. It's the same with our transit, same with specialized transit. The midday is busy. So we do not know the exact number of users during that time. But my educational guess on it is that it's extremely low. So if we would likely get 2 to 3, and depending on the day of the week, midweek, not so much. I know the weekends were busy. And we only had about 14 to 16 active users of that cab as well. So in terms of how many people were using it and how often they were using it, again, between 14 and 16 people using it, and then 50 to 60 rides per month. And that doesn't include anybody that may have come in from out of town through Blue Mountain Resort or come to stay at a hotel that have called to use it as well. They wouldn't be one of the regular users.
Yeah, I guess this is, thank you for that answer. This is one of the problems of having a private company doing part of our business. We don't really know all the information that we might want to have to make a decision. Because if we were providing this service for 14 or 16 people at a cost of $84,000 a year, maybe we'd think about how differently to do it, or maybe we wouldn't. It just puts a different light on it. That's all. I'm sort of a mind to go ahead with the taxi option for the 2-year period, just so we can get the numbers and make a better judgment on how best to serve, this small but important segment of our community. But, do you have any sense once if council was to go with the taxi option, would that have an impact on our Transit Plus service that's running now, in your view?
Madam Chair, I don't anticipate any impact. I think one of the largest reasons we have an increase in use of Transit Plus is because of its cost. I've personally spoken to a lot of people who have used it or are having troubles registering or who had issues, which we got through, that it was convenient and affordable for people that hadn't left their home. In one incident, it was over 10 years because she couldn't afford it.
Right.
But now people are moving around. I have a lot of really good news stories with it. So I don't see any direct impact with the taxi being involved and taking it away from Transit Plus.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I have to say, coming into this meeting, I was of the mind that what I thought I had heard from, during the various deputations over the last number of months were 2 main problems. One, people were having trouble if they got to the hospital, they couldn't get back after 9 p.m. And the second one was socializing after 9 o'clock. And from our discussions with the hospital, as you mentioned earlier, they were more than happy to accommodate the hospital issue. So that sort of took that issue off my mind. And then with the socializing, with so few people that I've heard from you, even using the service in the evenings, the early part of the evenings, I had been thinking, well, if we extend it to 11 on Friday and Saturday nights, at least we'll see if there's a need for a socializing purpose. But I just, it's such a difficult issue. So anyway, I'll turn this over. I know there's some more comments. Anyone else before we hear from Councillor Doherty again? No, go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
I'm sorry, and I guess this question is going to be through you to the clerk. So if we were to support the alternate, does that mean that we are abandoning our specialized transit? And are we abandoning the notion of Transit Plus operating between 9 and 11? Because we've got an either-or motion here.
Right now, I think we're in the motion that deals with the part 2 of that recommendation.
I understand that. I'm asking what are the implications if we support part 2? Are we saying that we are going to abandon our specialized transit in favor of private operator and also the extension at 9 to 11 at the less expensive?
Looks like Director
cost?
Slama would like to have a go at answering that. Go ahead, Director Slama.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Doherty. If a council chose to go with the alternative option of the accessible taxi, then the first component of the first recommendation, which is the enhancements to the specialized service, as Coordinator Wisniak has already mentioned, those plans are already on the way and have been budgeted for, but option 2B would not go forward because we have not budgeted for that.
Does that answer your question?
Answers my questions, doesn't make my decision any easier.
Okay, well, lucky for you, Councillor Baines has a question.
Just a follow-up sort of on Councillor Doherty's question, Your Worship, and that would be in regard to the 2 years it's assumptive of, 63,000 this year and 84 next. And to your point, Mayor Hamlin, it would be nice to be able to at least make an assessment at the end of this year, December 23, as to what the numbers were and the viability and reasonableness, if you will, to continue in 24 with the same contract. So, and of course, the transit company perhaps doesn't like all this discussion back and forth because they're probably going to want a 2-year contract one way or the other. It just makes it unpalatable, it seems, all the way around in this regard. That's why I was in support and still am of option 2B, which is to try and start smaller and more prudently and then add to it. The problem with 2B, as Councillor Ring has pointed out, is it doesn't give you that immediacy of response, which the alternative option does. This is conflicting for me as well. I'm not sure that helps anyone, but those are my thoughts at this point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You know, when it comes down to it, if we say the number is 14 to 16 people, so let's say it's 15 for 84,000, if we actually want to calculate it, what is it, $5,500 a year for each person for the service? So I think, do we look at it that way, right? Or is that sort of, it looks like Director Slama has something to weigh in on this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to, I was recalling some numbers that Coordinator Wisniak had presented to us last year, which was approximately 1,100 users of the specialized service is what my recollection was.
It was that during the pre-pandemic.
Oh, okay. There you go. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what the typical ridership is on this specialized service. So that was under the Red Cross specialized service.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments or questions or ready to vote? Ready to vote. Okay. All those in favor of the motion that Councillor Houston's put on the floor? And those opposed? And the motion passes. Well, thank you for that discussion, everyone, and thanks for your work on this file. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda is the semi-annual water and wastewater uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity update. That fascinating topic, but very important for our community. And I believe that we're going to hear from Director Slama on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have Manager of Environmental Services, Manager McGinnity, with us this evening. She's joining us virtually. And so she will take us through the report that's in front of you this evening. This is the first of 2 reports that Council will receive in 2023 that's related to the water and wastewater uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity. So these two reports are to provide council with information that summarizes how much of the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant capacity has been allocated to development and how much remains open for allocation. So with that, I'll pass it over to Manager McGinnity.
Okay, well, this is a good news story, Manager McGinnity. Please go ahead.
Certainly, yes. If we can dive right in and advance the slide, that'd be great. Thanks. So Collingwood Water Treatment Plant is currently operating at about 80% of its rated capacity. So as everybody is aware, a plant expansion project has been initiated. While the design of the water treatment plant expansion commenced in July of 2021, limited remaining water supply capacity is available to new development until the expansion is complete. In April 2021, Council passed an interim control bylaw to pause development while the town completed a land use planning study to ensure the town had the tools in place to manage the allocation of water and wastewater servicing capacity for development. A key outcome of the study is the town servicing capacity allocation policy, or SCAP, which was approved by Council in March of 2022. The SCAP was amended in January this year to take into consideration feedback received from the development community and lessons learned from the first 6 months of implementation. Next slide. In accordance with the SCAP, uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacities for the drinking water and wastewater systems needs to be updated twice per year. This ensures that there is a clear picture on the servicing capacity remaining available to allocation for new development. The first step in this process is determining the hydraulic reserve capacity for both treatment facilities. For water, we calculate the hydraulic reserve capacity by subtracting the maximum day demands in the Collingwood system and other municipal supply commitments from the rated treatment capacity of the water treatment plant. For wastewater, this is determined by subtracting the average day flows from the wastewater treatment plant rated capacity. Next slide. Using 3 years of data, the average annual maximum day demand for the water system and average day flows to the wastewater plant were calculated. For comparison purposes, the winter maximum day demand in the drinking water system was also considered. Based on this updated system information, the hydraulic reserve capacity of the drinking water system is now 5,330 cubic meters per day, and the hydraulic reserve capacity for the wastewater system is 6,243 cubic meters per day. This translates into 3,994 and 6,151 single dwelling unit equivalents, or SDUs, respectively. Since there are fewer SDUs remaining in the summer hydraulic reserve capacity, summer demands are considered the limiting factor in the drinking water system at this time. And with the UV being installed at the water treatment plant this year, we don't expect winter demands to be a limiting factor going forward. Next slide. Now that we know what we are supplying to existing customers and the remaining capacity in our drinking water and wastewater systems, we need to determine what is available to be committed to new development. This uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity is calculated by subtracting existing servicing capacity commitments to development from the hydraulic reserve capacity. A factor of safety is also being considered in these calculations to allow for some uncertainty around the servicing demand estimates, as well as around the timing of the commissioning of the expanded water treatment plant, which is currently nearing the end of the design stage. Next slide. In accordance with the SCAP, committed servicing capacity includes developments where site plans have been approved, a registered plan of subdivision is in place with no further planning approvals required, building permits have been issued where no planning approval was required, and while the ICBL is in place, ICBL exemptions have been granted and no further planning approval or building permit has been issued. In accordance with the SCAP, development approvals with uncommitted servicing capacity include registered plans of subdivision with site plan approvals still being required and draft plans of subdivision. Next slide. Taking into consideration the servicing capacity that has already been committed to development, residential lots that can connect to the town's water and wastewater systems without any further planning approvals, and a 5% factor of safety, there is 1,837 cubic meters per day of uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity in the drinking water system, and 3,923 cubic meters per day of uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity in the wastewater system. This translates into 1,376 and 3,865 SDUs, respectively. I would like Council to note that the increase in uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity in the drinking water system from the last update is primarily the result of a reduction in the 3-year average maximum day demand in the Collingwood drinking water system. This frees up some additional capacity for new development to connect. Next slide. As with previous staff reports, we have provided a recommended servicing capacity allocation forecast for the drinking water system, since it is currently the limiting factor for new development. Based on the identification of additional STUs being available with these updated calculations, we're recommending 550 STUs of water servicing capacity be made available to service new development applications through the end of 2023, and 450 STUs be made available to allocate to new development through the end of 2024. Within the 550 SDUs we are recommending be made available in 2023, 80 would be set aside for small-scale development proposals, and approximately 73 would be set aside for an OLT settlement. The remaining uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity will be considered for allocation for other future development proposals prior to completion of the water treatment plant expansion. Next slide. That's our update for this latest semi-annual report, and be happy to answer any questions.
Much for your presentation. I see there's no one in the audience who wishes to address council on this. Clerk Gomes, is there anyone online? No. Okay, so I'll read in what we have before us. It's that staff report PW 2023-08 regarding the semi-annual water and wastewater uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity update be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Houston, Deputy Mayor Fryer. Any comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, and I definitely support the report. It's completely accurate as far as I can tell, and but I wanted just to actually provide some general comment. Reviewing this is the same situation as back in January when we were reviewing the updates to the SCAP. I just have concerns about wanting to understand more about the water situation, and I did have the opportunity to have some discussion with the CAO today. And I think all council would have seen I did some emails, but the information was a little later in the day. And what I'd like to do is plan to speak with the CAO over the next month. And the next DNO, I'll bring forward something a little more formal in regards to what I'm looking for. I believe that we need to understand the situation and try to consider what options we have moving forward to try to help the situation, because today's presentation from Mr. Mealey, I'm concerned in what I read with the developer comments about the SCAB that there's more of those situations out there where they're feeling pretty pressured because of the situation. So, as I said, I would just like to let council know that I'm going to continue to work on that and bring something formal forward at the DNO.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. McGinnity, can you tell me if we use, and that's a big if, I know, all the SKUs for for 2023, in those being 550, and for 2024, 450, i.e. 1,000, what would be left, if anything, in 2025?
Your answer.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. So if we could advance back, I don't know if the slide, if the presentation is still available for council. So if we could go to slide 7. So ultimately, thank you very much. So ultimately, we're setting aside this factor of safety, that 1,557 cubic meters per day. And we also have the additional 376, or sorry, I'd have to convert that back to cubic meters per day. I could do my calculator here quickly for you, but we're looking in the range, I believe we're in the range of around 1,500 SDUs remaining.
Now, I'm sorry, but it's never very good in this sort of tables and figures, but you've given me a great assurance. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No further questions.
Okay, yeah, that was a good answer. Thanks for asking that question. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. It was? Okay, yeah. So that's the end of our staff reports. We also have a resolution before us from the Collingwood Heritage Committee. I'll read it in that the minutes of the Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting held February 21, 2023 be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved. And the recommendation before us is that the Collingwood Heritage Committee requests that Council undertake a review of the Heritage Grant Program with special attention to the reevaluating the maximum amount of $3,000 per project. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Councillor Baines, Councillor Doherty. Any discussion? Councillor Doherty.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering through you to Director of Planning, would this be something that is going to be considered in our heritage review that's anticipated for 2024?
Yes, Director Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, that's absolutely correct. Although we completely appreciate the Heritage Committee's desire to move forward quickly, staff would still recommend that all of the programs, incentives, and grants be evaluated comprehensively through the 2024 program that will come before you for budget consideration next year.
Any follow-up?
Yes. So I might... no, I would not support this request at this time because it is going to be reviewed as part of our larger review of our entire heritage program. But in addition, I'll just add that we have not been using the maximum allocated budget each year. So as an example, last year the budget was 40,000 available for grants, and we're sitting at about 35,000 that was used. So I'm just not sure whether there isn't, sorry, that's what I want to say this. There is latitude to approve more grants. It's not as though we're down to the wire and we need to look at some alternatives immediately. That's also a decline from 2022 and from 2021. So I would suggest that we wait until we undertake the entire review.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'd like to do is make an amendment to this motion based on the answer that Director Valentine gave. And so I'll turn this over to our Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And if you want to go ahead then and give your motion that you would like this consider.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just add on to the end of the recommendation that's here. During the 2024 review already requested by Council.
And would you have a seconder for that?
Don't know.
Councillor Ring. So I will put that on the table. I'll ask you if you'd like to speak first or last.
Yes, I'll speak first. I think this is a good idea that we do need to look at our Heritage Grant Program. And I do appreciate $3,000 per project. It may be a low number. But we have asked staff to look at the whole Heritage granting program and other aspects of our Heritage program for 2024. And as Director Valentine's indicated, this would be part of it. So no sense pulling this out and asking staff to work on this ahead of that exercise. So I've just recommended we make sure that it's clearly understood that this would be done during the 2024 review.
Okay. And I'll then turn to the floor and Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Councillor Doherty, I suppose. I don't quite understand your concern about passing this motion as what is to be gained by not passing it, I suppose. I know we will deal with it in 2024, but is there something in here that concerns you as far as establishing a precedent or something?
No, I think I think really the intent of the mayor's recommended amendment and my lack of support is probably amounts to the same thing, as to wait until 2024.
Any follow-up, Councillor Baines?
No, none, thank you.
I'll let Clerk Thomas add.
Certainly, thank you to the acting chair. So just for clarification, the 2024 budget approvals haven't happened. So this would be that this request to undertake the Heritage Grant Program be considered for the 2024 Heritage Program review that will be considered in the 2024 budget deliberations.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, so everybody understands that nuance. Okay. Anyone further that would like to speak to this? Don't see anyone else. And any comments I was going to make mesh all together with what's been said. So I would call the vote then. All in favor?
Do we have a seconder?
The seconder was Councillor Baines. Yeah. Yes.
No. The amendment?
That was on the amendment. When the amendment was made by Mayor Hamlin, I asked for a seconder and I had Councillor Baines.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, I
You said it.
Yes.
You called my name.
Yes.
So.
And I looked right at you when I did.
If I was still out of the room. Sorry.
I'll give it to you.
I knew it was one of the six.
Well, I thought maybe I missed something. Maybe we voted on something when I didn't, wasn't paying attention.
We'll make sure that that is correct in the minutes. And I will call the vote then. All in favor? And that is unanimous. And I'll turn the chair back to Mayor Hamlin.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so now we'll vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. There's no items for the consent agenda tonight, and there are no departmental updates. Are there any public delegations this evening, Clerk Thomas?
No, there is not, Your Worship.
Okay, does any council member have any other business they wish to bring forward? Okay, I have two things. The first matter is directed at our clerk, Almas. I understand there's some ongoing discussions concerning 84 Hurontario Street, which is the parcel that the town acquired. And I do understand that there will be a visioning exercise next year, 2024, around our whole downtown that would include that piece. What's happening in the short term? Could you maybe just report back at a future meeting? I would be interested in knowing, and I know council and the public would be as well, what is the short-term vision for that parcel? And I do know the BIA is having some discussions around that as well, and perhaps we could invite them to that meeting as well. Does that make sense, Clerk Thomas?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I will note that we did have a brief conversation at our BIA board meeting last Thursday, and I'm sure Councillor Houston could also provide a brief update, but we were planning to come back to Standing Committee in April for the Corporate and Community Services to provide a bit of an update, and knowing that we're completely grateful that we don't have any money, town money set aside for the budget for any interim solution until the visioning exercise is further considered and hopefully moves forward in 2024. So if we're able to present something back in April, that would be great.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And my next question was, I had been going back and forth with our executive director, Peg. Now that I'm walking into town hall every day, I'm realizing there's more we could do to put our best foot forward in how our town hall looks. And so my question, I'm not sure if she's here tonight, but I'll just put it out there to the universe and she could respond at another meeting if necessary. And there she is. Well, welcome. But my question was, will the wood, we have lots of wood on our town hall. Is it in our budget to be painted this year? Because of course it's peeling and so on. Also, our front doors need a little, I'll say, tender loving care. And I also noticed the light standards outside our town hall, the bottom portion of it have holes in them and aren't also indicative of the town's best foot forward. So over to you, Executive Director.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the town hall, certainly agree that we want to put our best foot forward. So we do have $10,000 that's been included in the 2023 capital budget for painting, as well as some operating dollars. And the intent of this money was to complete some of the window repairs that are required and apply a fresh coat of paint. And that would be specifically for the windows that are facing Hurontario Street. You are correct that the front doors are in need of a facelift. Unfortunately, they were vandalized and they have some wear and tear. So Fleet and Facilities has been looking at options for 2023 to update the doors, and that includes things like refinishing. Unfortunately, $10,000 will likely not be sufficient to complete all of the required exterior work on Town Hall. If this is the case, then we would certainly be bringing back an additional capital ask in 2024. But at this moment, we do have $10,000 and some operating dollars. The light standards, so at times our light standards do sustain some damage over the winter, and this can be due to winter operations as well as the harsh weather conditions causing wear and tear. So in the spring, our Public Works team does examine the standards to determine which require being freshened up. So they can be painted, but if they do have significant damage, then they do require replacement. The replacement bases are quite expensive, but Public Works has planned in advance and they do have a few on hand. So we are currently aware of one standard at the front of Town Hall that has damage and requires replacement. And that's already been flagged once the weather decides to cooperate. And then once the warmer weather is here, they'll certainly go around, take a look at the standards and complete any repairs that can be done once the snow clears and we have warm weather to let paint stick. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, very good answer. Thank you so much. Okay, well, if there's no other business, it looks like we are at the time for adjournment. I see Councillor Potts is ready to adjourn.
Fastest we've ever been.
That is fast. All those in favor? Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, everyone.